Hey all everybody. Welcome to another episode commentary. In case you missed my pilot commentary, the reason that I am doing these is because with our standard podcast episodes, we are not spoiling future events beyond the episodes that we're talking about. And therefore, anyone that might be coming to the podcast hoping to hear thoughts in a more spoilery context in regards to the completed series, um, yeah, basically, I figured I wanted to release separate episodes that would serve that purpose, but with all of the editing and writing that would add to my already very busy schedule, um, yeah, it just wasn't realistic. And the solution that I came up with was to instead do these audio commentaries where I would just ramble for the length of the episode and not have to edit. Um, and yeah, I thought the pilot went well enough, better than I expected as far as, um, you know, me knowing myself and how often I ramble and lose my train of thought. So yeah, we're gonna continue the experiment and hope that it continues to go fine enough. And yeah, like I said, tonight we're doing Tabula Rasa, and I am gonna go ahead. I'm gonna be playing it on the Blu-ray. Um, I know everyone else might be watching it on streaming or DVD or what have you. It's my understanding that the runtime and edit is the same across all those platforms. So I'm going to tell you as I'm clicking play, and then I'm going to tell you when the previously on Lost segment starts once it pops up on the screen. And then hopefully you guys will be able to be synced up. Okay, so I am hitting play now. Now there is the recap on the screen. Yeah, the very first ever previously on Lost recap. Um, so what annoys me about these recaps on the Blu-ray and I believe on the DVD is that you cannot skip them without skipping the entire teaser. Um, this one, for example, isn't really a problem, but later in the series, I feel like some of the recaps are borderline spoilery. They'll recap things from like there'll be a plot point that hasn't been revisited in quite some time, and then the recap for the new episode will recap that plot point, and then you're like, okay, I know that that's going to come up, and then you're kind of looking out for that. Um, Also, some of the times it'll like recap a character's previous flashbacks, and that kind of clues you in to whose episode it is prematurely. Um, so yeah, I'd like the option to skip past it without having to fast forward and then back up if you go too far. But alas, that is not the option that was given to us. um, but yeah, okay. So we're back to the Marshall. I guess I can go ahead and talk about how. So, in all the years of me watching this show, many times I've watched it, I never like perceived the possibility that a some kind of romantic relationship was being hinted at between Kate and the Marshall, or some past romantic relationship. Um, I never read it that way. Now, as I keep talking about, I jumped into the season midway through, and therefore, by the time I went back and watched the beginning of this series, I already knew certain things. I knew the direction that certain storylines had been going in. Um, and so, for that reason, I knew that the Marshall and Kate, that was not any kind of romantic dynamic there. Um, I knew that already by the time I watched these early episodes, and therefore that would be part of why I didn't read it that way. However, I will say that anyone that I don't know that if anyone I don't know that anyone has said this, but if anyone were to claim that that's an inconsistency of some kind, that oh they were clearly hinting at um, there being something there romantically, and then they yeah, and then it's obvious they changed their mind. I would disagree because yeah, to me in the mindset of them not having a romantic relationship, didn't think anything was weird about these scenes in the context of my, you know, already established understanding of what their dynamic was. But yeah, so move on from that, I reckon. I think this scene does a pretty good job of like recapping where we left off in the pilot without it feeling too heavy-handed. Um, it is a little noticeable, especially if you are familiar with screenwriting or storytelling. Like you can kind of pick up on what the writers are doing here by having them restate certain things, but overall, it doesn't feel too forced. I don't think. I I I find it a little bit funny that Kate's the one that says "so we lie," and it almost sounds like she's taking issue with it. But I don't know. Maybe not. Um, but yeah, if so, the irony there is that she's already um, doing the same type of lying by not sharing um, what other people would consider valuable information about herself. Um, that's not a nitpick, by the way. I just, yeah, just find it amusing. Forgot to put my subtitles on again. Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, this is nothing that's going to sound like a nitpick, but I'm just trying to like put myself in Boone's headspace here. Like, even if he had done this without waking people up, like, I don't know. When they woke up in the morning and discovered that he had done that, I don't know that anybody would react particularly well. I mean, granted, he would have by that point proven that he wasn't doing anything malicious with it, but yeah, seems like maybe it was a discussion they should have had before they went to sleep. But no, as I keep talking about on the podcast proper, I really like Boone's arc. Um, like how well established his like that trait of his is from the very beginning. Um, he just so badly wants to be a hero, um, like to a fault. um, yeah, it's just another example of it. Somebody pointed out in our group discussion of this episode that this guy being a one-armed man was probably a reference to The Fugitive, and funnily enough, I never thought about that. Yeah, it seems a little too coincidental for that not to be the case. But also, so that's the thing about watching it, like watching the series this time with first time viewers and me trying to put myself, trying to see it through their eyes. This I think was the first time that I could appreciate how um, how if you're watching this for the first time and you don't know at this point for sure if Kate is already a fugitive or if the flashbacks you're watching might establish why she's a fugitive. Although, as I'm thinking that through, maybe it is more obvious because I mean, obviously, she uses a fake name, which doesn't necessarily mean she's on the run, but from the law. But I mean, if you're paying attention, you know that this guy that had her on the plane is a U.S. Marshal, and they established right away in the flashback that she's in Australia. So, um, yeah, I guess you probably could piece together pretty quickly that she's already on the run. Someone in the group discussion was questioning the decision to lie here because of that potentially limiting the option or the options to try and track down the source of the French transmission and the power source that has enabled it to run for 16 years. And, I kind of hinted to them that, like, well, it's only been a day. Maybe that'll be something that gets discussed. And I think their response was, well, it's just weird that the conversation isn't already happening. But I do think that there's evidence in this episode that is already on Saeed's mind when he's telling people that we can gather up laptops and cell phone batteries or whatever else he says um, to try and boost the signal. Obviously, that's not actually what he wants to do, but I do think I do think what he actually wants with those things is to try and build, what he gives to Kate in the next episode to try and triangulate the source of the French transmission. Because when Kate goes up to him in the next episode and asks him what that device is, he says it's too soon to talk about. And that kind of establishes that he may have had this on his mind right away after hearing the French transmission. But, once again, not wanting to mess with people's hope, he decided not to talk about that idea until he knew for sure he could execute it. Um, so, yeah, just an interesting. Yeah, that was an interesting thing that person brought up, and it was an interesting thing to kind of think through. Yeah, and then we talked on the podcast a little bit about Kate's mindset here. Like, I don't think she's rooting for the marshal to die, but the reason like she's asking like if he said anything and all that is like if he ends up dying anyways without telling anybody that she was under arrest, like maybe she doesn't have to tell anybody, and maybe it'll be better for her or easier for her to get away if if and when rescue comes. Um, so yeah, I think she's asking just so she can kind of gauge whether or not she has to start explaining things. Um, and yeah, obviously at this point, Jack doesn't reveal that he knows. Yeah, I really like this scene. It's the first real Jack and Sawyer scene. Um, obviously, they interacted a bit in the pilot when Jack helped break up the fight between Sawyer and Saeed, but this is the first real. Uh, Again, I keep wanting to use the word debate, but I don't think that's really the right word. It's the first time that they're conflicting worldviews are exchanged. And clearly Sawyer's coming from a much more selfish place, but uh, I think everyone can agree that he makes some good points here, particularly this one about the pills. Yeah, what's the point in using up all the pills if he doesn't have enough? And then now you've got all everybody else that's still alive without that medication. Um, Again, like Sawyer doesn't make that point specifically, and I don't know for sure that that's what he as a character is implying. But to me, that's the most interesting ethical component to the question of whether or not Jack should continue trying to save him. So it's Charlie and Claire's first on-screen interaction. Obviously, we later find out that they met on the first night. That's the cool thing about that flashback later on that establishes when they first met. Like, there's nothing in that scene that was just on screen that said they hadn't interacted before. So yeah, I like when there's consistency there, or like when they're shows careful not to contradict itself. See in here, Jin tells Sony he loves her, and it's kind of like the first, like, oh well, it doesn't make it right how he's treating her, but at least there does seem to be some genuine affection there. So I think right there is where the deleted scene we talked about on the podcast would have gone. The finding the tell scene, right after Claire asks about them not hearing anything, or you know nothing happening. I'm like, uh, yeah, that makes the most sense based on what's happening in the deleted scene. Like when Locke is pointing out people that he believes are lying or trying to hide something. Charlie's there with Claire messing with the wheelchair. Um, and yeah, it seems like it's about this time of day. Kate would have been walking over to Hurley before this scene. Which yeah, that scene I love that scene so much. It's so funny to me. Uh, yeah. Which okay, so I mean that's something I could talk about too. Is well yeah, and then yeah, Saeed was getting that tarp ready in that deleted scene too. Anyways, uh, it's funny because like the amount of times I've seen this show and that I've seen, like this episode for example, you'd think that like the funny scenes aren't as funny to me, or the sad scenes aren't as sad, and I do think it fluctuates somewhat depending on who I'm watching it with, and what it feels like their reaction to things are. But a lot of the time, like the more I get to know the characters and understand them, like going back on a rewatch, I almost find the funny things funnier, and the the more heart wrenching stuff, even more devastating. Um, I don't know if that's how other people experience rewatching or rereading things. yeah, if it's a good story and the characters are well written, then yeah, kind of knowing ahead of time where it's heading, I feel like that can add to the emotional connection to it, I guess. I don't know if Ray here planted that idea into my discussion group's heads, but in the discussion group, a lot of people were thinking that what Kate did was, in fact, kill someone in relation to a domestic violence situation. Um, and they're not far off. It just wasn't really her. It wasn't her domestic violence situation, or the violence wasn't happening to her. Um, and yeah, that was something I kind of asked them: was if you found out that what she did was no big deal, would that be disappointing? And one of the Drews said, the Drew that hadn't seen the show before said that he would find it disappointing. And I didn't say this, but because I didn't want to hint at what actually happens, but I would have felt the same way. I think that what she did, when you do find it out in season two, I think it's like the perfect balance of like a very bad thing that she should probably be punished for, and at the same time something that's kind of understandable. Like you can kind of see why she did it in a way that doesn't leave you like condemning her as harshly, I guess. Um, of course, what the show goes on to illustrate, especially like they really hammer the point in season three when Kate visits her mom at the diner. Um, it's not Kate didn't kill Wayne to get her mother out of that relationship. She was 23 when she killed. Oh, so that's why I said in the group discussion that I thought she was 23 on the island, and then after the fact, I was like, yeah, there's no way that's right. Like in the edit, like when I was editing, I was like, that's not right. And I'm just now realizing why I had the number 23 in my head, and that's because that's how old she says she is to her mom on the night she killed Wayne, because her mom's like giving her crap about riding the scooter. Or no, but she asked for an ID when she orders a beer. She's like, "Mom, I'm 23 years old." She's like, "Yeah, but I'm not gonna let you drink and drive on that death trap or whatever she called it." Anyways, sorry, tangents. Um, yeah, so that's why 23 was in my head. I think she's actually like 27 by this point. Um, but oh yeah, what I was saying was that she was 23 when she kills Wayne, so she's been an adult for a full 5 years. She never tried to kill him before that, and that's something that the marshal asks when he first meets her and arrests her. Is why now? Why did you go and blow him up now? And then by the end of that episode, we find out it's because she found out Wayne was her biological father, and she really resented that, and she hated that he was part of her, and so she killed him, kind of committing an action that she arguably wouldn't have committed if he wasn't part of her. But I think that's part of the point. Anyways, but yeah, the way I really like how they hammer that home is in season three when the mom was like, "What you did for you." Kate tries to say that she did it for her mom to save from that relationship, and that's just obviously not true. So again, like when they do reveal what Kate did, I think it's the right balance of like you can sympathize with why she did it, but by no means was it a noble act. The subtitles say that what Walt said there was that Mr. Locke said a miracle happened here. But what I hear Walt say is Mr. Locke said a miracle happened to him. And I think that's what he actually says, because Michael's response is, well, yeah, a miracle happened to all of us. I also feel like if the line was a miracle happened here, that would be a bit too strong of a hint, maybe, of the reveal. Like going into the next episode, I feel like that would prime people to be looking for, okay, what's this miracle that happened in the immediate aftermath of them crashing on this island? So yeah, all that's to say, I don't think that I think the subtitle on this Blu-ray is wrong, which does happen sometimes. It can be frustrating. I always like this little bit of setup for the next episode, that you hear the boar before you know that it's a boar, and you find out in the next episode that that's what that was. Again, they don't go out of their way to tell you that's what it was, but you can piece it together if you care to. Yeah, this scene kind of puts the whole button thing into perspective. Jin, Jin didn't want her to have the top button undone when talking to Michael. It just makes you think how he'd feel about this. Somebody once asked me why I thought that Charlie wrote fate on his fingers like that. Um, I didn't have like the best answer. I think that he does that in the pilot. That's the one small way that the show introduces that theme of fate in the pilot. Like I talked about last week, the pilot does a good job of establishing themes and just the format of the series and the way that it works, but the way that it tells the story and communicates things. But certain things that are only kind of like certain themes are only established in that pilot briefly, such as the one is light, one is dark thing. Obviously, that goes on to be a critical part of the series, especially in the end game. But yeah, and I think that's kind of the same thing with Fate. I think it's kind of just like a very emo rock star kind of thing to be doing after a plane crash, is to be writing Fate on your fingers. I feel like that's the in-universe explanation for why he does it. It's simply a bit of a character thing. Like he's just being that way about it. But then on the more analytical side of the meta narrative, I guess, it's just establishing that fate is something that the show is interested in exploring. As for why he changes it to late in this one, I also don't have a great answer for that either. I feel like one obvious way to read it is, he's being a little less emo-y about, more playful about the fact that Rescue uh, isn't showing up, but then also Claire's sitting there when he does it, and I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say like could be related to the baby, but the baby's not technically late. It's still about 8 months. So, um, yeah, I guess that's my take is about Rescue and him being more playful about it. But if anybody has a better answer to that or a better interpretation of why he does that, please do comment that. I would be interested to hear. Yeah, it just kind of blows my mind that I never picked up on that possible interpretation that when the marshal here says she got to you too, never registered to me that people could read that as like, oh yeah, she tricked me once at one point, like she apparently is doing to you. Um, Again, I already had some more context from future episodes, but I just always read it as yeah, she has a pattern of you know getting guys that are sweet on her to try and help her, and usually doesn't turn out well for them one way or another. Even going back to Ray, that's the thing. Even in the context of this episode, like he could be talking about Ray. I mean, obviously Ray turns her in, but um, he obviously did care about her to some level. Yeah. So I finally got my dad watching this show because of the podcast, and he was talking about how it didn't make sense for the marshal to be um, in Australia to apprehend her, because he has no jurisdiction there. How that would actually work is the local authorities would have to apprehend her, and then she'd have to be extradited. So yeah, that could just be something that you're meant to suspend your disbelief on, or uh, it could be viewed as just another indication that Miss Marshall and Kate like have this previous relationship, and that he's uh, really going out of his way to get her, and maybe not doing things by the book. Um, yeah, as far as the specifics of how he would have been alerted uh, to Ray's tip, uh, don't know, but I don't feel like it. I don't think I feel like it's in the realm of possibility that he would. Yeah, like if they knew she was in Australia, like if they were certain enough about that to put rewards up for her. I don't think it's crazy to think that he might have been in Australia looking for her. Yeah. And then, I mean, hell, he could have put up the fucking poster himself. I don't know. I'm just lots of speculating. Point is, that was something I had never thought about, and I don't know if the writers did or did not think about it. But just trying to think of a way to read that in the context of the show that's not a bottle. Yeah, I also like the performance there from Josh Holloway because he's clearly rattled. Like I think he meant what I think he means where he's coming from, about that being the right thing to do. But yeah, he's clearly shaken by it before finding out that he fucked it up. And so yeah, not only does Jack prove that he can do it, like Sawyer just said that he couldn't, that he did what Jack couldn't. And so not only does Jack prove him wrong, but he does it in a much more brutal way, or brutal for Jack, I mean. Um, Although, yeah, probably Marshall too a little bit. Um, to actually have to choke the life out of this guy versus just shooting him, it's a bit more traumatic, I'd have to imagine. I don't know how many of you have seen the Jimmy Kimmel's unnecessary censorship of Lost, but it has ruined this scene for me. um, yeah, basically, when he says, "I found your son's dog," there's a clip in that uh, where they bleep out the word "found." Um, so it's like, your son's dog," and yeah, it's hilarious. But yeah, every time I see that scene now, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, what? It's funny watching these episodes because I'm watching before we record the podcast episode to take notes. Then I'm watching this at the screening with the group before the group discussion, and then I'm watching a third time to record this commentary. Obviously, I'm watching it on mute and not you know paying as close attention to it. But watching these episodes this many times, in an overlapping order, I'm noticing how often in these early episodes that Jack sits on the beach and stares out at the ocean like that. He does a lot of sitting and brooding in these first few episodes. I would imagine until they find the caves. Yeah, White Rabbit is the. So earlier today, my co-host and I recorded our White Rabbit episode, which means that I watched White Rabbit for the first time. This go through to take notes on it, and yeah, he's doing it in that episode, and he does it in Walkabout. But yeah, now that they've found the caves at the end of White Rabbit, I would think. Yeah, as far as I remember, that it's no longer, I think. Oh. I like the foresight that Julia in the group discussion had about the Discman eventually dying. Because yeah, that's another great moment when you get a handful of these sequences throughout the first season. It kind of becomes a tradition of sorts, like a recurring way to end episodes. And then yeah, when it dies on at the end of one of those, it's pretty funny. No, sad Sawyer. Yeah, those have to be hot, right? I mean, I've never really wrapped anything around my fingers like that, but I feel like it would be hot and itchy. And then the super creepy ending. Which I do wonder what's meant to be going through his head at that point. Like, does he just look that way because he's the sun's in his eyes? Is he just watching them and with an otherwise blank face? Yeah, obviously the episode is trying to set up the next episode, kind of make you wonder once again, like what the hell is this guy's deal? But yeah. But all right, since we're on the credits now, I will read off my own credits. Thank you to candidate number 90, Ben Ward, candidate number 108, Jeffrey Winslow, candidate number 69, Brian Phillips, candidate number 32, Chuck Boyd, and candidate 341, Hans. I'd also like to thank the multiple people that have donated equipment and resources used in the production of this podcast, and those include Mary Mullins, Brandon Huth, Charles Huth, William McMinn, and Charlene McMinn. If anyone else would like to become a candidate, you can do so for as little as $1. Even just a one-time donation of that amount will get you a permanent spot on the candidate wall, which will be displayed in all future video versions of the podcast and any other law-specific YouTube videos that I make. But it will also get you verbally credited the way that you just heard me credit the other active supporters. It will get you credited that way for any video, like in any podcast episode or video that comes out within the 30 days of your initial donation. Or if you choose a recurring donation, then that will be the case for as long as you remain an active donor. And you can sign up to be a donor at either ko-fi.com/candlepun or patreon.com/candlepun. Or, of course, you can support the channel and or the podcast for free by doing things like liking the video, liking the podcast episode, leaving a 5-star review. Basically all the typical stuff that you hear other podcasters and YouTubers say. Subscribe. If on YouTube, hit the notification bell. All the cliche stuff that you're probably sick of hearing. But no emails this week. No spoiler emails to address or comments. Please, guys, feel free to send stuff in at dr.candlepun@gmail.com. Just comment on the video if you'd like to respond to anything that I've said here. Anything that you feel like I didn't talk about that, maybe I should have. I want this to be more of a conversation than it is right now. It's just me saying some stuff. I'm trying, obviously I was pulling some stuff from conversations I've had recently and in the past, but yeah, anything to make me feel like I'm not just like talking to myself for 45 minutes at a time would be nice. Until next week, or hopefully you're checking out the more official podcast episodes. The next one of those will be on Sunday. I'll have another commentary out next Thursday, and that will be Walkabout. Hope you guys come back for that.